I'd like to introduce our speaker today, David Zackham. David, if you can come on video and wave.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me well.
Awesome, awesome. We can see you and hear you loud and clear. Thank you for joining, David. And for folks who are, not yet heard of David, he's a celebrity already in the field of analytics in this country. He heads analytics and is a vice president at Swiggy. Right, and I'm sure there is not a single person in the audience who has not heard of Swiggy yet. So David's team is responsible for improving customer experience, helping restaurants grow through insights, get more business to them, of course, provide better discounts to us as consumers, and reducing the cost of delivery, and also identifying and evaluating new business models, which I'm sure is a very fascinating exercise on its own. So before Swiggy, David was at Mu Sigma. He led a team of about 450 people, worked with 23 companies as in different verticals and across Europe, US, and India. Right. Interestingly, David started his career as a scientist, right, and writing algorithms and probably identifying drugs using computers. So that's a fascinating start, David. And from there, it looks like you realized that there are other skills that you need to have, and then quickly leadership roles, right? Moved into leadership roles. So hopefully some of that wisdom will help our audience today here as well. And with your interest in drums and drumming, David, hopefully now more of drumming going on at home, since most of us are locked at home, for a lot of times. And I believe you also are passionate in learning new languages. And I'm assuming you're not talking about programming languages here, but human languages. So I myself, I'm a very keen learner of languages, speak about 9 proficiently, but would love to catch up with you on those before. So we have an interesting topic here, and it almost is very guilty of me to bring at this topic at this time, where I'm sure hunger pangs are hitting people. But I think it's going to be a fascinating insight into what happens when any of us orders that favorite big biryani from Meghna or whatever popular joint that people love, and that gets delivered to home, right? So from a data science, and what's the digital journey of the biryani? So please take us through that journey. I'm sure it's going to be fascinating. So over to you. I'll stop sharing now.
Can you see the screen?
Good.
Okay, perfect. So firstly, good evening, everyone. I must apologize for my looks. By the way, I don't look like my photograph. So I've gone through the 2x2 matrix of long hair, clean shave, long hair, long beard. I also, for a short moment, had my haircut with the beard. And now I have no hair and no beard. Okay, so that's my, so each of the lockdowns has had a different look. Hopefully I'll get back to my original self. Thanks for the nice introduction.
But we are talking to David Zackham,
yeah,
not the other persona. Yeah.
Not my younger brother, that's for sure. So let's get started. Okay, so just in case you didn't know, Swiggy, it's India's largest food delivery platform. You may not be aware, but we are present in 500 plus cities, able to deliver food from all these cities in an average time of 32 minutes, which is the fastest across the industry. Provide employment to more than 2 lakh active delivery partners, and we're continuing to do that despite the downturn because of COVID as well. Partner with nearly 2 lakh restaurant partners as well, huge number of restaurants on the platform. And obviously, we have millions of customers and giving us a lot of good business. So that's a little bit about Swiggy to start off with. So now I know it's it's again tough time. I'm stopping you from your biryani. Let me assure you that the only thing better than this presentation might be that biryani you order after this. So please do order. So let's say I'm hungry on a Saturday night, right? I just go to my app, maybe put a filter for biryani, and a bunch of biryanis come. Purists, I don't know if you like Meghna biryani, but technically it does sell quite a lot. So let's say you go buy a Meghna biryani and it kind of comes home after some time. That's that's what we see normally. What I want to do today is just go inside into the algorithms. There are certain questions we do not ask when um, this thing happens. First is, for example, I live close to Electronic City, and the nearest Meghna is 10 kilometers from here. How is it that I'm able to still order biryani and it comes really hot, right? First question. Second question is, there are hundreds of restaurants at any point of time. So how does Swiggy show me the best restaurant most suited for myself at any point of time? Third is, how do we ensure that pricing is right? Can we do can we be a little bit more analytical about the pricing? And fourth is, how do you ensure the food comes on time also? Okay, so these are, if you look at it, four parts of the journey that I want to talk a little bit about. Since we don't have much time, I'll just give you a quick glimpse of some of the algorithms that work inside how we do this. Specifically, first is understanding consumer needs and fulfilling the gaps that they have. So how do we do that? That's one question. Second is, how do you personalize the restaurant screen so that the restaurants that you like come more to the top. Three is, how do we ensure the right pricing for the customer and the right profitability for the restaurant as well, using some kind of food intelligence. Okay, and how do we do on-time deliveries using not too much money spent on our delivery partners. Okay, those are the four things that I want to talk a little bit about. I also want it to be, I don't know, we can't talk to each other, but I just want to keep it interactive as well. So I have certain questions. You think of the answer, and I will show you the answer maybe in 15 seconds or so. Okay. So the first question is, which country has the most restaurants per capita? Okay. And where would India be in that list? Okay, just think of what questions. Okay, I can actually see some answers coming on. Okay, USA, India, Italy. You are looking at the wrong part of the globe, I would say. Okay, China's a good answer, by the way. I'll just show you the answer. Okay. Japan has the most number of restaurants per 10,000 people, and US is quite good, but it has about 25 per 10,000 people. So if you look at India, we have very few restaurants, and just the city of Shanghai has 3 lakh restaurants. And if you saw my previous slide, all of India has 2 lakh restaurants. Okay, so that's the difference in number of restaurants we have in India. So what that leads to is, if you open your app, especially at times like breakfast when you don't have enough options, in a place like Koramangala and Bangalore, you get all the best brands. You have Adyar Anand Bhavan, Adigas, Chai Point, all of these really good brands are available. Whereas if you look at a place like Yelahanka, I know friends who live in Yelahanka and they'll be like, yeah, we don't get really good food. Okay. Again, here are certain questions that I want to ask you before I jump into the answers. There are places in India where the best restaurants are not available. For example, if you live where I live, right? I live in Kudlu, which is close to Electronic City. Literally very few good restaurants here, although the population density is quite high and a lot of affluent people also live here. Swiggy can actually build a kitchen right near you and get the best brands from the rest of the city to come here. So now the question is, how do we choose which location is the most suitable to start a kitchen? Okay, that's question number 1, which is, where do you start a kitchen? Question number 2 is, how do you identify what is the right cuisine that that particular area needs? Okay, and question number 3 is, what is the perfect brand to bring to that particular location? Okay, so I'll ask the first question. If you can you can type it on chat or just wherever, you can just think about it also. So how do you figure out where to start a new cloud kitchen? Okay, that's the first question. Think a little bit about it. So one of you is taking demand. Actually, demand means that the order has been fulfilled. So if the order has been fulfilled, then then means it's already there, it's being met. Okay. There are a lot of good answers coming, which is one is, for example, what is the population density of an area? Actually, it's not just population density. It's so R. Nair has got a good one, which is how many restaurants are there per affluent person who's living there. Okay, that's one. Second thing is, for example, how many orders are people making per capita? So for every 10,000 people, how many orders do they have? Okay. A bunch of you also talked about other ways of demand, which is things like people are opening the app, but they're not buying it. Okay. Or the overall conversion rate. So there's a lot of traffic coming into the app, but people are not buying enough from there. Okay. So all of these things actually give us indications that I'll tell you two other things. Like, for example, if there are a lot of orders which are coming from far away, long distance orders, right? That's another signal that we get that, hey, in this area we don't have enough restaurants. Okay, so these are ways that we figure out how to. So what are the places where there are a lot of gaps, and then you can actually do a clustering of these and identify what's the best what's the best place to start a kitchen. Okay, so second question I'll ask you. Actually, most of you got this fairly quickly, by the way. How do you decide which cuisine is the best one for that particular kitchen? Let's say we've said that, hey, Electronic City needs a kitchen. So now how do you figure out which cuisine is needed in that area? So a couple of good answers here. One is based on previous orders. Okay. The thing is, if people are ordering a lot of a particular cuisine in a given area, most probably that means that that cuisine demand is being met. Okay, we are talking about unmet demand, which is how do I figure out what is the order which was supposed to be there, but it was not there because I don't have restaurants delivery. Okay, one good answer that has come up is searches for a particular cuisine. So when something is not available, you can actually go and search for it. So let's say I'm searching for Chinese food, or in this case, biryani or whatever, right? Then I know that in that particular area, the cuisine is missing. So I can do that. So people are talking about demographics. We operate at a very, very hyper local level. So demographics, even at a country level or a city level, are a little difficult to get. Specifically at hyperlocal level, it's really tough to get the demographics. Okay, so demographics we don't use so much. We don't do survey results also because surveys are very expensive as well. So the good answer that I got was searches. Okay, the actual thing that we use is a concept I'm sure all of us are familiar with. So let's say I want to look for a good biryani, right? I search for biryani and I see the results that come up. If I'm very, very happy with the results that have come up or the brands that have come up, right, I can actually click and say, buy it, go to the menu, add things to cart and buy it. But what happens when the results are not very good is I do this back and forth, which is I go to a menu, see the things there, maybe I don't like it, I come back. Go to the menu again, see the things there, come back. So this back and forth of menus, okay? So think of it as number of menus you do per cart that you create. Okay, so you can call it the menu to cart ratio. So number of menus for every cart you create. The higher the number of menus required to create a cart, it means that the cuisine there is not very good. So you can look at the menu to cart at a cuisine level across different small parts of the city and specifically point out which cuisine is missing in which part of the city. Okay, so that's one of the things we do, which is the menu to cart ratio. Okay. The other thing we use is people generally searching for cuisines. So, and there also this concept called null searches, which is, let's say I search for the corner house near my area. So there's no corner house nearby. And it'll give me results similar to corner house. But then I know that corner house was something that people had searched for. So maybe dessert or ice creams is something that this particular area needs. So that's another way of finding out how to do specifically the identification of the cuisines. Okay. So with that in mind, now we've identified the location based on all the demand-based proxies that we have. We got our cuisine based on the other signals we have. So now the next question is, what is the best brand? Okay, choosing the best brand actually is very difficult. So the easiest thing that people would actually say is, hey, why don't we just look at ratings? Okay, ratings and reviews. Okay, the reviews, for example, are a little bit biased, because if your order is delayed or if there's a little bit of spillage, the rating goes down. And it's kind of biased based on the experience, which is not related to the order itself. So then we also said, hey, let's just go to our competitors, right? Just get it from the competition. So if you go to some of the other sites which are specifically for reviews, what you see there is some of the reviews there are also biased because of things like the service was good or bad, the preparation time in the restaurant was good or bad, the cleanliness of the restaurant when you're sitting there is good or bad. Okay, those kind of things are also affecting the reviews. So for a moment, if you assume that reviews are not a good way to judge a restaurant. Okay, so the question again is, what are the other ways of judging what a good restaurant is? Secret shopper is an answer that I've seen that actually biases because of the shopper itself. Okay. Okay, Ravi Shankar has got a good one. He says repeat orders. If I like a restaurant, I actually repeat a lot from that particular restaurant. Good point there. Okay, Bhanu is saying the same thing, which is if the food is good, people will continue ordering. How busy the restaurants are usually. Yeah, most of the answers that I'm getting that are valid are those which are saying, hey, if I like a restaurant, I'll buy a lot from the restaurant. Okay, so one very important thing is obviously the order share of that restaurant. For example, if I order a lot from Meghna Biryani, that means I like Meghna Biryani. Okay, what are the other signs of customer love that are there? Okay, so I'll just give some examples of customer love that we have. First is if you love a restaurant, you probably don't look at other options. So maybe you search for Meghna Biryani, click on it, buy it immediately. Okay, so that's one way of showing customer love. The second way of showing customer love is, for example, if you have a special occasion. So when my parents visit, I don't buy from a normal place, I buy from a special place. Okay, so if Beijing Bites is my regular Chinese food place, I can actually go to mainland China if my parents are there. So now in my mind, the premium nature of mainland China means that for special occasions, I go there. So the places that I go to for special occasions are the things that I like more. Other signs of customer love are, let's say I go to a new city. Okay, new city, first order I place on a certain restaurant. That means that certain restaurant has some kind of fame in that area. Okay, there are signs of customer love which can actually use and use to determine what it is. Okay, so now the solution of how we did it, right? We figured out a framework for discovering the cuisine gaps, which I mentioned, which is the understanding of the back and forth on the menus. That's one major symbol that we use. Brand selection model is based on customer love that we have, and then there is the location identification model based on all the signals of customer demand that we get. Okay, so typically you would kind of on the bottom right is a Chennai thing. You will find all the pockets of demand that you have across the city, and then you can actually identify the centroid of these points or a point which you can by humans determine what it is, one by one, and there, that is where you locate your restaurants. Okay. The other thing for biryani, sorry, for rating of a brand is, if you look at this graph on the left, top left, on the x-axis we have percentage of the brand's order coming due to signs of customer love. Customer love, as I mentioned earlier, were things like, hey, buying it on the first menu visit, searching for those brands, things like that. Time spent on the app is very less, special occasions, those kind of things. And on the left hand, on the y-axis is the amount of sales that they actually make. So if you look at this biryani ranking for Hyderabad, right, top right you'll see Paradise Biryani, so which has good customer love and very good sales. So basically the symbol is that Paradise seems to be a good biryani in Hyderabad. I know there are a lot of lovers and haters of Paradise Biryani, but that's one of the most loved as per what the data says. Okay. Top left is the place where that place is doing a lot of sales, but it's not very loved. So Pista House, for example, is one that comes there. If people who live in Hyderabad, Pista House is actually a very, very famous brand, but they're more of a bakery or a halim place than biryani place. Okay, that's why for the biryani cuisine itself, the love is not very high for Pista House. Okay, on the bottom right, you have Swagat Residency or Sitara, where the love is very high, but the sales are not very high. So what that means is these are potential future growth brands, and these are places where Swiggy could actually invest a lot in. Okay, so that's how we identify the location, the cuisine, and the brand that we can get, and then we can actually set up the kitchen and get the brand. So when we started the Electronic City kitchen of Swiggy, a huge chunk, like 30-40% of all the orders in Electronic Cities were coming from one kitchen, and that's the success we are seeing in these places, because as I said earlier, we don't have enough restaurant. Okay, so what we're able to do now is we create this best-in-class restaurants out of cloud kitchens to do this demand supply the gap is being met, and in case we have supply gaps where there is no current player in that field, we can actually create our own private brands. So some of them are really, really famous, the Bowl Company and Homely, which are owned by Swiggy, and no other player used to play in this space when we launched them. Now there are also other companies which do the same thing, but these are gaps that we identified that we could fix later on. Okay. So just going under the hood, right? The key takeaway that I want to share with you is many times the strategic decisions, despite being very, very analytics driven, requires us to understand the domain of the food space very, very well. Okay. So that's one of the first things that I want to share with you. Okay. Second thing, how many updates did Google make to its search algorithm in 2018? Okay. As long as you get order of magnitude right, that's fine. The correct answer in this case is about 3,000 updates. Okay, so about on an average 9 per day are actually updates that Google made to its algorithm. Okay, why did I say that? Do you want to know what is the best biryani as per your location? Okay, so one of the things we do there is how do you personalize the list of restaurants that comes to the customers. Okay, page ranking, cookies. We actually have full customer purchase data from everybody in the city and the customers purchase data as well. So we don't have to. We already have the intelligence that we need to fix it. Okay. I want to take a lot of questions later on, so I'll just go to what we're doing. Okay. First, what we do is you can just think of 4 things that we do. First is non-personalized way. Let's say 2 things. First is if a restaurant is doing a lot of volume of sales, obviously it needs to come up. Okay. So one is volume based. Second is just rating itself. The better the rating, the higher it should go. Obviously, things that are loved will go up. then the next two will be very, very person specific. For example, one is at both the brand level and the cuisine level. Brand like Megina Biryani, cuisine like biryani itself. The more share of the wallet I spend on a particular brand, the higher that brand will come up. So if you would have noticed that at a specific dinner or lunch slot, if you ordered a lot from a particular particular brand, that one comes right to the top on the Swiggy screen. So that's one kind of personalization. Second kind of personalization we use is similar restaurant. Let's say Corner House is not available in my area. Can I find places similar to Corner House and show them? Fully well knowing that, let's say dessert is my preferred cuisine in this case. Okay. So those are the four things that we use: sales, ratings, share of wallet, and similar restaurants. Okay. That's again a very, very rudimentary way of doing it. And yes, we do segregate across lunch and dinner. So we have 5 slots: one breakfast, lunch, snacks, dinner, and late night. Okay. And the view is customized for every slot, for every customer. That's how we do it. So if you look at it on the left, it's basically, you don't have to look at the formulas. They are quite complicated. Basically what it says is the higher the share of wallet you have to a certain brand, the better, the higher it shows up. But that's one of the other, one of the early ways of doing it. What I also want to talk about is, we moved away from formula-based things to more of a machine learning-based things. So we have a gradient boosted decision tree that's also coming up, along with a way of measuring the quality of rating. I don't know if you know NDCG, normalized discounted cumulative gain. That's what Google uses for its search results. A combination of both of those is what we are using now. So if you can see the yellow line, it actually shows much better performance compared to the blue line, which is the one I just explained. So yellow one has many variables. And on the Y side also, we actually have, instead of just maximizing conversion, we can now have a multi-objective function, which is to maximize conversion, you maximize maybe size of the order, you maximize that or minimize the time required to deliver it, or maybe the cost of delivery also is reduced. So you can have multiple objectives and have this function as the function which is used for ranking. What we've actually done is, first we had just the relevance kind of thing, then we did all this gradient boosting and things like that. At any point of time, we probably have 6 or 7 different versions of the listing model, and not all of us are seeing the same version all the time. We rigorously do a lot of A/B testing of every new model before scaling it, and some cities behave in a different way. So some cities have different kind of model and other cities have a different kind of model. So what we do, the key learning from this section would be that ML is good, relevance kind of rating is also very good. There are different approaches to it. What we do is, at any point of time, we are running several experiments on the listing logic, and after the experiment, we find out issues in it, and once we fix it, that's when we scale it out. So the key learning is build, experiment, implement, iterate, and that's the only way to move forward. Okay. Next question. This is very interesting. I'm fairly confident most of you will not get it correct. Okay. So how many dishes are listed on Swiggy? I'll just wait for a few seconds for answers. Okay. Okay, 15,000, 10,000, 100, 30,000, 90,000. Okay, 1 lakh. It's like an auction. It's increasing. I heard 250,000. I heard. Okay, 10 lakh is the highest I've seen. Okay, so I'll show you the actual number. Okay, the actual number is 2.5 crores. Huge number of dishes listed. So now if you want to find out, so the problem that, and a crore of them are active every day. So the reason for such a big number is not because the unique dishes are very high. So I don't know if you guys have heard of this thing called Chicken Dominator. Okay, if you've not bought it, you don't know what it is. Okay, so it's a Domino's chicken pizza. So chicken pizza, I'm sure is It's a fairly common item. Lots of restaurants will have it. But Domino's has named it as the Chicken Dominator, or the Meghna has named their biryani as the Meghna Special Chicken Biryani. So now the use of the word Meghna and the use of the word special has made it unique. Now, how does a special biryani differ from a not so special biryani is something that that from a data perspective we are not aware of, and that's why we have 1 crore dishes active at any point of the time. Okay, so now the challenge here is how do we use some kind of intelligence to compete with how do we use intelligence to give recommendations to restaurant on what the pricing should be. Okay, the solution was really tough for us. So what we did was we had to go and use a bunch of food related experts and create what is we are calling as food intelligence, which is think of a hierarchy of all kinds of food items. You have, let's say, main course, starter, dessert, blah, blah, blah. In main course, you have, let's say, rice, gravy, roti, blah, blah, blah. In rice, you have biryani, pulao, blah, blah, blah. In biryani, you have chicken, mutton, veg, blah, blah. And then in chicken biryani, you have, let's say, so those are the kind of things you have. Then what you can do is we use a lot of artificial intelligence to actually say which of these dishes maps to which of the items on the food tree. So then using that particular food intelligence graph that we have, we are able to map our 2.5 crore items onto specific things. So now when somebody says Chicken Dominator, I know that it's a chicken pizza, and because it's a chicken pizza, I can actually go and I can go and figure out what are the other similar chicken pizzas in case this one is not available. Okay. Okay, I'm just looking at some of the comments also. Okay, so I'll just proceed with this. So that is a very tough task to do. And once you do that right, what we're able to do is do a few things. First, for example, there are items which are acquisition drivers. Okay, so for example, I don't know if you realize this, but if you go to a new restaurant, you won't order a new dish. You will order a dish that you're familiar with. Let's say you want to order for the first time from the bowl company, you probably order Rajma Chawal because Rajma Chawal is something that people are very familiar with. Okay, or let's say chicken tikka, which is it's a standard dish across restaurants. If you go to a new restaurant, you probably order something which you're familiar with. Or if you go to a new dish, you probably order it from a familiar restaurant. Okay, so there are acquisition drivers, which are dishes which will which new people are buying. Then there are retention drivers, which are dishes that the regular customer keep buying over and over again. And then there are attrition drivers, which are dishes that people eat before they never come back again. Okay, so just that intelligence can help us figure out what are the things that you can price low. For example, acquisition drivers can be priced low because you want new people to come and buy it. So Rajma Chawal can be priced low. And the attrition drivers, the dishes which people eat before the drop off, are the dishes which you can remove from the menu, saying, hey, I don't want people to have a bad experience. Just cut the dish and not have it. Then the retention drivers, you have a choice. You can keep the price low and have a lot of people buy it, or you can keep the price high because if people anyway like it, they can buy it also. So those kind of things we've done. Then we've done things which are, hey, dish X from my restaurant, how does it compare to all of the competing restaurants in the area? So you can take like a chicken tikka and compare it with all the other chicken tikkas in the area, and you know how you're priced compared to everybody else in the area. That combined with what your brand positioning is, you can actually make a call of, hey, do I want my chicken tikka to be more expensive, less expensive compared to my competition? And it's a choice that restaurants can make. But what we can do is we can give that recommendations to the restaurants on what is the price that a chicken tikka could have. Okay, this is just a quick example of some places. If you look at this is just a random restaurant, right? You look at something like a chicken wings. A lot of people are buying it as an acquisition thing. So which means you want to price chicken wings cheaply, and then more people will buy it and they become your customers. Okay. If you look at this one, nachos with cheese, this is something that a lot of the existing customers are buying, which means that this is something that you want to maybe slightly increase the price of, or you watch how people are buying it. Okay. These two ones, the burgers seem to be not doing very well because the churn score is very high, especially the veg burger. So these are candidates where you can actually remove and still do all right on this. Okay. On the left hand side, based on what's the price of the item and what's the repeat rate of the item, you can identify different kinds of items in the menu itself and then optimize the menu or the price of those items. Okay. So these ones are in initial experiment stages, and we've seen really, really good encouraging results, both in terms of conversion, which is how many people are buying it. And actually there's a item called cold start of new outlets, which you can actually help when a new restaurant is onboarded. How do you ensure that the naming of the menu items is good enough so that people can start buying from there? Okay, so that's also something where we've looked at this. Okay, key takeaway from here is if you're going into a new domain, you want to ensure that solutions that are there, you need to reimagine the solution. You might have to create a new thing like this food intelligence graph that I was talking about from scratch, and reimagine things. So that's the key learning from there. I will take a quick 2-3 minutes for my last item, and then we can go to Q&A. Okay. How long are you willing to wait for your food? Okay. By the way, if you order now, by the time we are done, you'll get your food. Okay, I'll give you the answer. Most people feel very, very upset after 60 minutes. Okay. Let me see if any of you got the answer. 10 minutes. So the numbers I'm seeing in the chat are much lesser than what I'm saying. So this is based on data. What we're seeing is anything more than 40-50 minutes, 40 minutes, people start getting a little upset. But 60 minutes is a thing where they all are very upset, because if you look at it, you're hungry and you ordered, and if it's delayed, you get very, very upset. Just FYI, anything which is taking longer than 5 days in an online world will probably drop the cart. Okay, based on that, the thing is, how do I reduce waste in the system while still delivering on time? So for example, if I just give this example, when the moment you place your order, this is the top left thing, it goes to the restaurant and the restaurant starts preparing your food. Okay. And parallelly, we look for a delivery executive. The delivery executive accepts the order and travels the first mile to the restaurant. At the restaurant, they wait for some time because the food is taking a little longer to prepare. And once the food is prepared and the person is at the restaurant, you can pick it up and go to the customer location. So that's the whole thing of how our order cycle works. So now if you look at it, this segment, the wait time at the restaurant is pure wastage. The reason is, when the driver is waiting at the restaurant, he's paid lesser than actually when he's traveling. So they don't want to wait so much. And from a Swiggy perspective, if that person was not in the restaurant, they could have been delivering other orders. Okay. And at the end of the day, customer is somehow directly or indirectly paying for the time of the driver, and hence any wait time from the customer perspective is also extra cost that they're paying. So the question was, how do you reduce the wait time at the restaurant? The answer that we gave was, we actually found a very sophisticated machine learning model. What it does is, depending on the items that you order, depending on the time of the day and day of the week, depending on how much stress the restaurant is under, stress meaning how many orders it's processing, depending on things like the size of the order that you have, more orders meaning more items today. If you order 10 tandoori chicken, it takes more time than ordering 1 tandoori chicken. Okay, things like that. Based on that, we actually estimate how much, how long it's going to take to prepare your food. Once we know how long it's going to take to prepare your food, you can actually delay the assignment of the driver, so that just enough so that by the time they reach the restaurant, the food is just prepared, or maybe instead of waiting for 10 minutes, you reduce it to like 1 or 2 minutes wait. Okay, and then freshly pick up the food and deliver it hot to the customer. That's a very sophisticated machine learning we built, a machine learning algorithm that we built, which predicts how long the food is going to take. When we started building it, one of the things that we needed to do was to capture the data correctly. We had to incentivize the restaurants to actually press a button which says, hey, my food is ready. And without pressing of that button, we were finding it very, very difficult, because we knew when the driver was reaching the restaurant, we knew when they were picking it up. So in the case of when the driver is waiting for the food, that kind of works properly. But then if the food is waiting for the driver, which means if the food is prepared early, then that data we were not able to capture. So all the models are really bad. So what we had to do was we had to go backwards and start just with getting good data. So the restaurant now was incentivized to press that button which says food is ready. Using that, we made the model better and better. And today, actually, because of COVID, we are reusing that exact same model for actually a different purpose. So you know that how long the food is going to take. So I know the approximate wait time at the restaurant. I also know the number of orders that the restaurant has, to the number of delivery executives who are, in quotes, hanging around at the restaurant. Okay. So one of the things we're doing during COVID is to ensure that the drivers actually don't crowd at the restaurant. Because we know how long the food is going to take, we can actually deliberately delay the drivers going there, so that crowding at the restaurant is not there. So this model we kind of rejigged it. Now it is being used to reduce the crowding at the restaurant as well. Okay, so that the person goes, food is ready, just pick it up and walk away from there, and the risk of transmission is much reduced because you're not talking to people. There is no crowding there. That's an example of how we used just-in-time or prep time prediction to actually reduce the delivery partner wait time by a significant amount, and ensure that any late arrival of the delivery partner actually had no impact on the customers also. Okay. Key learning from here is building intelligence, machine learning is all very cool, but it has to fundamentally start with collecting accurate data, because without accurate data, you don't have accurate predictions, and then things go bad. Okay. Just summarizing it, if you are trying to do strategic decisions, you have to be well versed in the domain. Experimentation is the only way to improve things, and new businesses need solutions to be reimagined, including building new things, and building intelligence starts by collecting accurate data. Okay. There's a lot of publications that we do, by the way. Many of the things that I've talked about are actually available at bytes.swiggy.com. You can just go to bytes.swiggy.com. I've given some examples here. You can go to bytes.swiggy.com and read all of these examples in much detail and technically if you want as well. Okay. Thank you. I will stop for questions if you want.
Wow, David, that was pretty intense. I was hoping to see some pictures of biryani, but looks like no, that was incredible. Thank you so much. I think what is fascinating to me was, while many of them were fascinating, what I absolutely did not expect, I'm sure a lot of people here as well, is throttling the driver space, using a lot of machine learning so that they don't crowd near that restaurant. I think that's amazing. So there are a few questions that are coming up, and we will spend some time on those. So one of the things is, I'm sure there are lots of attributes that go into these models, and you need to decide what attributes matter and what don't, right? Now, it's a very broad question, but how do you even decide what analytics attributes are worth collecting from the product?
That's a tough question. Okay, so we have to. Here's what we do.
One slice of it and maybe.
Yeah. So here's what we typically do at the beginning when you're building a product. For example, this is a tiny button called veg non-veg. Okay, you click on the veg button and it only shows you veg items. Okay, just for that feature, we imagine all the future questions we could ask on that specific button. Okay, and for all the future questions, what is all the information that we need to answer those future questions? And based on the information that we need to collect the information at the beginning itself when you're building the feature itself. Okay, let's say we want to do pick up and drop off of packages. So when we're building that feature, we imagine all the feature questions that we ask, we are going to ask, and start collecting the data. Okay.
And does this happen in the conjunction of product managers sitting along with?
Absolutely. See, the analyst and the product managers work together and identify a bunch of questions. So once we have the questions, we go and say, analytics says, what is the data needed to answer these questions? Once we have the data that is needed, both of us, the product and the analytics team, goes back to engineering and say, hey, I need you to send me this data. Okay. So once they're building the feature or beta testing it, our data platform team, which is a team which manages the data pipes and stuff like that, they verify that we're getting the right information. And if the information is not coming, we cannot launch the feature. We don't launch the feature unless the instrumentation and the data is done properly. Because at Swiggy, data is a competitive differentiator. And unless we collect the data, we can't do this. Okay. That's first part of the answer. Second is also, we have tons of data. Okay, like billions of data points are captured every day. Okay, every day. It also is a lot of art on behalf of the data scientist or the analyst to figure out which of these billions of data points in what kind of aggregation and transformation can go into my ML. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a separate point. Again, you can just talk about feature engineering. You Google it on, and you'll find a lot of information there.
So you keep collecting the data points, and especially you want to make sure that you have the data for those attributes before you even start talking or thinking about a feature.
Yeah.
Right. Unless.
Before we launch it, we need to have the data.
Excellent. Okay. Good. So fun question. I think if dynamic pricing goes wrong, right, or biryani gets sold, let's say for 0 rupees. Inadvertently due to some algorithmic goof up or some promo codes or whatever, whom do you hold responsible for? Is it
firstly, we don't do dynamic pricing. So one of the core attributes of Swiggy is the price is the same for everybody.
Okay.
That said, there are certain parts which are dynamic. For example, the amount of discount you get depends on who's paying us and things like that. There are some special coupons that you can get. There are like surge fees that you pay. The different cities have different kind of surges and things like that. We do get them wrong once in a while. Okay. Swiggy is very, very, I would say, consumer centric that way. So we have consumers who are drivers, consumers who are people who order the food, and consumers who are restaurants. And all of them are partners for us. So we kind of take the blame on ourselves a lot, unless we can prove that it was done by fraud by somebody else, right? So we kind of take the blame ourselves if something goes wrong. Okay. There's one time when a cred coupon, which is supposed to be for one use for one person, was leaked, and everybody could use it infinite. Okay. So a bunch of people started using it. In an hour, we had a bunch of
orders going on.
We also have internal alerts when something like that happens. The moment the alert is fired, we can actually stop the order. But in an hour, a lot of people made the coupons. So we lost some money there. But those kind of things have reduced quite a bit nowadays ever since we set up the alerting that we have.
So Rohit from Experience Flow is asking, how do you bring, do you use any of these techniques, data science, to bring customers from competitors' platforms, or even attract people who have never used any food app? I mean, apart from the standard customer acquisition techniques.
So I will not give you a full answer to that, okay? Because it is a competitive differentiator.
Yes.
So we have models which actually say when a session comes into Swiggy, okay, so you launch the app, we are actually able to tell how good that particular session is going to be as a future customer. Okay, the moment you install the app and you open it, we can tell how good of a future customer that person is going to be right there. Okay, so because we are aware of it, we are doing things. Okay, the other thing is, because of COVID, many people have become dormant customers, both for Swiggy as well as Zomato. So we are working on ways that once they come out of dormancy, okay, that's a good time to switch platforms. Okay, so how can we use that as an opportunity to get them to switch platforms? That's something we are working on as well, but I can't give you more details.
Excellent. No, that's fair enough. So there are quite a few questions, David, and I think, I'd request you when you find some time on the LinkedIn thread, just, probably you would want to respond. I just want to acknowledge a few names here: Chandramouli, Ashwati, Arun Kumar, Vishal Madan, Banu. So quite a few interesting ones. Of course, some of them are quite relevant to our conversation, which we couldn't pick. But really, thank you and appreciate you for taking the time and giving us this insights. Truly, I never expected, and I'm sure many of our audience also did not expect the kind of tech that you are putting into these things, right?
Yeah, so, I must say these are 4 things I showed. Literally, I can show you hundreds of them.
I'm pretty sure. I'm quite sure.
For hours, if you want. Yeah.
Yes, and this is a fascinating area these days.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks a lot.